I'm here to address probably the most difficult aspect of the car business, and that's the inequity situation. I'll say this, that when I would go to, the desk, and the desk would pencil me back, the ACV at 8,000 and the customer's payoff was 12, I panicked. And there were many years that I didn't know how to address the inequity situation effectively. Now, I was told, you just tell the customer that the market's soft, or that's the wrong color, or the vehicles that are going through the auction, the Odessa auto auctions, that particular model for that particular year with those particular miles is that figure. I was also told that there are reconditioning costs. You need to put new rubber on pretty much a lot of the trades that come in, and Mr. Smith needs some new tread around his trade. And yeah, that's $800. You put $800 worth of wheels, or rather tires, on a trade, and that's a feasible number. Those I heard of clothes where and I used it for a lot of years. Mr. Smith, you didn't pay down your loan as fast as the natural depreciation of the vehicle, of your trade. And yes, that is the case. But the impression that the customers get from those types of responses doesn't cover, in their mind, a $4,000 deficiency. They need a close with teeth, and they need a close that is real. And it's my opinion that, based on my experience, that most salespeople, I was part of most of those salespeople, wasn't properly armed with the facts of why Mr. and Mrs. Smith's trade isn't worth what the actual payoff was or is in today's scenario. So, what does that do in the dealership world when a salesperson, is stumbling over himself and he can't really come up with a really good reason to gain Mr. and Mrs. Smith's confidence to get in their wallet and pay that deficiency down? Customers buy cars all day long, every day, across the United States, with salespeople that cannot articulate properly the facts of what is actually going on. And they dig into their pocket, they pull out their wallet, and they let go of that money reluctantly. They just figure, hey, the last dealer told me I owed $4,000 more than what my car was worth, and this guy's telling me the same thing, and quite frankly, Mrs. Smith, it's time to go. We're either gonna walk out the door, or we're gonna pay this $4,000 off. What do you want to do? And Mrs. Smith, she says, I'm tired of this. Mr. Smith says to Mrs. Smith, you know what, I'm tired too. Let's just take it on the chin. We can afford this $4,000. And they do that all across America. And the dealer, and the salesperson, and the sales manager are saying, hey, we got our number. Congratulations, Mrs. Smith. But the reality of the situation is when Mr. and Mrs. Smith reluctantly let go of $4,000, there inevitably will be a phone call from Honda, Toyota, Nissan manufacturing, and they're going to ask them about their experience in the dealership. And what is the impression of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, along with all the others that are not told exactly what is going on with the actual cash value versus their payoff? And it is reflected in the CSI score in that survey. Those manufacturers, they ask them, how was your experience? And they're quick to say that they felt that they were taken advantage of. And they tell those people that on the telephone or in the mailer. So how do you avoid that? Yeah, Mr. Smith, you didn't pay down your loan, as fast as the natural depreciation of the vehicle. You know what? That is the case, but does the customer really want to hear that? And do they believe that that is what happened? When Kelly Blue Book said they were supposed to get $9,200, $9,500 for their trade. So back to the point, and this is the reason why I'm making this video about inequity. And the reality of the situation is the salesperson is not armed with the facts that he or she needs in order to gain Mr. and Mrs. Smith's confidence, in order to change that bad CSI score that they were going to receive if they didn't have this information. And the information is this: most salespeople typically forget to ask Mr. and Mrs. Smith a couple key questions. One of them is, Mr. Smith, did you purchase that vehicle new? If Mr. Smith purchased that vehicle new, there were some incentives, low interest rate loans at that particular time for 1%, 2%. And we know that Mr. Smith has good credit. And Mr. Smith, we're assuming, had good credit then. It's kind of hard to ask Mr. Smith on your previous loan, hey, did you have good credit? So we're going to assume he had good credit. Now the second question is did your salesperson ask Mr. Smith if that was a used vehicle? Prime interest rates on used vehicles 3 years ago, 7-8%. The ramifications of interest on an automobile loan, all right, let's just say it on a $17,995 car, let's just say he put $2,000 down. He's financing 15 and some change. The interest on that amount is $3,000 on an 8% loan. Another question that the salesperson a lot of times forget to ask, and this is just money on the table, is did you purchase an extended service or a vehicle contract, Mr. Smith? Well, those typically go for, $1,800 to $2,300. When you start adding $3,000, $2,200, $2,300 on the end of an automobile loan, plus, regardless of what you put down on the vehicle, you're always financing the taxes on that vehicle. So Mr. Smith, added roughly, he added the taxes, he added the interest on on the loan, and you're looking at $6,000 right there with the vehicle service contract, the interest on a used car loan, and the taxes. So my suggestion is this: when you get the pencil from the desk, is to walk out with the tablet with bankrate.com opened up on the tablet with the numbers plugged in. And you say, Mr. Smith, these are the figures from the desk, and when you peel them off of the ceiling, it's time to say, hey, look at this. This is bankrate.com, and this is a mortgage calculator. And just below that is an amortization schedule. On this mortgage calculator, what we've done is we plugged in your numbers based on the anticipated numbers that you purchased that vehicle 3 years ago. You said you had good credit. Now, we've seen your credit. It's good. Was it good then? He tells you he had a good credit score then. Most people don't remember what interest they paid from 3 years ago. But we're gonna assume conservative, numbers, that you were paying 8%. If he was paying 10, let's say the dealer got him, got a point on the back end or two. So when you show Mr. Smith what the third party, not the dealer, this isn't what the dealer is saying. This is what a third party, bankrate.com, and you're showing him the tablet. It brings legitimacy to your circumstance. The third party showing Mr. Smith in hard numbers when you scroll down to 3 years later on the amortization schedule, the impact that the interest had on the vehicle loan. And what happens right then, at that moment? Mr. Smith forgot that you were that dirty car salesman trying to take advantage of the situation and trying to steal his trade. They weren't trying to take advantage of him. And what happens there, you have all these deals that are being done nationwide all the time. When a salesperson doesn't show the customer exactly what is happening, the ramifications of taxes, interest, and vehicle service agreements on that play a part of your actual cash value versus what the payoff is. Until that happens, the customer's thinking you're trying to take advantage of it. But once you show Mr. Smith the real ramifications of what is happening with that automobile loan, you have some credence and you have some real professionalism that you're demonstrating in this process, and therefore they will be less reluctant to come out of pocket and pay for that deficiency. They will be more agreeable, and they will pay that deficiency down. And on top of that, with CSI scores and how that affects the dealership allocation, affects money. Those are strong things that you must consider when making a presentation to Mr. and Mrs. Smith or your customers. And it gives you legitimacy where the guy down the street didn't give that information to the customer. And most importantly, what it does is it gives the salesperson an opportunity to sell more cars, and he or she will. Just like I did when I started using those tables. I used the laminated. I didn't have the tablet is something new that I'm bringing to the table. When you go get the customer's vehicle appraised, you're gone for 10 minutes. You bring that pad out. You have some pre-selected videos about the particular vehicle that they're interested in. And there's training videos that Honda gives out, that Toyota, all the manufacturers give them out. And they're comparative studies that you can click on that and say, Mr. Smith, it's going to take about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to go get your car appraised. You want some coffee? You want a Coke or something? No, you're good. Everything's good. Here, just watch this. Click. And give them something to do. That 10 minutes seems like an hour to them. When they're playing around with the gadget, the nice Samsung tablet, which they wish they had, or they probably do have. People love their gadgets. You give them something to do while you're over there doing your thing, getting the vehicle appraised. Takes their mind off of, gosh, I'm sitting in a car dealership and all that anxiety builds. What if he doesn't, give me what I want for my trade? What if the interest rate is so high? And you give them something to do. And while they're playing around with it, you're going to come back with the figures, and they've already had that in their hand. They've gotten used to having this, and they kind of liked it. It was a time killer. But at the same time, when they're watching those comparative videos against the other vehicle that they were considering, in those videos, typically they say, J.D. Power and Associates said. Well, isn't that the same thing that the salesperson just told the customer out on the demo ride and before the demo ride? And what that does is it also brings legitimacy and credence to your salesperson, the process. And since a third party, J.D. Power and Associates or Honda or whatever the video actually has in it, when your salesperson says the exact same thing that video said, because it's just a training video, the customer's impression will be that, hey, that guy was telling me the truth. J.D. Power and Associates says Honda's the best car on the planet, or the Avalon's the best car on the planet, and my salesperson told me the same thing. It makes them feel like all of that information was legitimate, and it builds value in that vehicle. You're reiterating all of the PowerPoints that Honda Motor Company or Toyota or Nissan or whoever it is trying to build value. Those training videos are powerful. If you have a training video that a customer can watch on the vehicle selection that they're currently negotiating on, it will build value. Let's just say Mr. Smith likes the idea of showing the bankrate.com, and everything's good. He comes out of the pocket with the deficiencies, ready to do it, but then you show him the figures on the new car that he's purchasing, and it's a new Accord, new $23,000 Accord, I believe, when I did the numbers, was $479. That's including taxes and zero. No, I think it was $1,000 down. Well, Mr. Smith doesn't want to pay $479. This is a good time to switch to a lease. Most customers don't know what cap cost reduction is. Heck, most salespeople don't know what cap cost reduction is. I believe most salespeople don't know how to accurately discuss a lease with the customer. When I would discuss leases with the customer, I saw the value and I would go for it. And I'd say, Mr. Smith, you should consider a lease. You hadn't held a title in your hand in 10 years. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? That's what Mr. Smith would say to me. And I would say to him, everything. You never pay off a vehicle. You trade your vehicles every 3 to 4 years. You still have a payoff, and you run into this inequity situation every time that you trade your vehicle in. How would you like it if you never had an inequity situation ever again? Was my spiel. And 100% of the time the customer would say, I drive too many miles for a lease. Yeah, I can't do the lease. You know what? And I folded every time until I stopped laying down on that particular objection that the customer had. I'd say, Mr. Smith, how many miles do you drive? And Mr. Smith's bouncing around. He says, too many. And I said, but, I'm looking at your trade. You're 75,000 miles. Doesn't look like it. Well, I'm fixing to get a new job, so he says, and I'm going to be traveling. Okay, well, I understand that. Let's just say, Mr. Smith, on that Honda Accord, that lease right now, I just checked the numbers. I looked at it yesterday. I don't think anything's changed from yesterday to today, but I'll ask my boss. But there's a zero down. If you cover the deficiencies, there's a zero down lease right now on a Honda Accord LX. Okay? And currently, that same vehicle, that LX Accord, is $479. That includes taxes. I believe it was with $1,000 down. I'll double check those numbers, but those are hard numbers. And let's just say, Mr. Smith, that currently we're $230 less a month on the lease, but I drive too many miles, Walter. I understand that, but just hear me out for 1 second, okay? Let's just say you're allowed 12,000 miles. That's the average on that particular lease. And every mile over for that year and every year after that you are in that lease, it's 15 cents a mile overage. So let's just say you drove 17,000 miles a year. 17,000 miles each year, that's 15,000 overage in a 36-month lease. That's what that lease is, okay? And it was $2,250 is what the mileage penalty was. Let's just say you drove 10,000 too many miles a year. That's 30,000 overage. You'd have to double that figure, so it'd be $4,400. Weren't you just $4,400 in equity? Well, you're 4,000. I'm missing it by $400, and you're paying $230 less a month. Let's just say that you drove, instead of 10,000 over each year, let's say you drove 15,000 over, so you're hitting 27,000 miles a year. If you're driving 27,000 miles a year, Mr. Smith, I'm assuming you're using your vehicle for business purposes, which you can write off on your taxes at the end of the year. Actually, you can write those off every year. So that will offset any type of huge mileage penalties. But still, even you can do a couple different things. You could pay off that inequity at the end of the lease, or you can pay, what was it, 62. If you go 5,000 miles over every year, that's, you broke it down to a monthly figure over the 3-year span, is $62 a month in mileage overage. Well, you take that $230 savings from the conventional purchase to the lease, and you break those $62 payments up into 36 months, and what is it? You're still saving $179 a month. When you multiply that by 36 months, that's I believe that was a $6,000 savings over the conventional purchase. And the best thing about the lease is that it's guaranteed in writing that your vehicle will be worth what the residual value is. You will never ever be in an inequity situation. You'll never have to walk into another dealership and have to go through this process again, where you owe $4,000 more than what the vehicle's worth. Well, the only difference in this scenario is that I did not put a vehicle service agreement on a conventional purchase, but you will be covered on the lease the whole time that you're driving it, unless you go over on the miles. And the amount of money that you're saving every month on a lease versus a purchase, even with the extra miles, you will run out of miles before the end of the lease term is up. With all that money you've saved, by the end of the lease term, or close to the end, when your manufacturer's warranty isn't covering the lease, you can self-insure. So the leasing world is getting stronger. They say that most people are holding on to their car 5.6 years, 6 years, even longer before they trade. That wasn't the case 10 years ago. Most people were trading in every 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. And they were all in an inequity situation that had any kind of interest that was attached to the loan. So wouldn't it be beneficial for your salespeople to see, let's just say they're selling 15 cars a month, every month, like clockwork? Wouldn't it be better to see that a majority of their customers coming back off of a lease in 3 years rather than waiting for 5 or 6? What happens in that scenario, and this used to be the case, is that if a salesperson sold 10, 15 cars a month, the customer would come back 3 years later, they had a pretty good retention rate, and then all of a sudden the salesperson that was there for 3 years, their income level went up dramatically. I mean, if you had 50% of your customers coming back every 4 years to buy cars from you, it was actually, dealer retention is a little bit higher than that, depending on the dealer. But plus the 10 or 15 cars a month that they're normally selling, and then all of a sudden a flock of their customers come back every month purchasing a vehicle from them. They used to say that a salesman, better than average salesman, that would keep his his butt in the same chair at the same dealership for more than 4 or 5 years would be hitting 120 a year. I don't know a whole lot of people making that kind of money, you know, in the tech industry or a lot of industries. Wouldn't it benefit you as a salesperson, you as a dealer, to really take a hard look at whether or not your salespeople know how to actually talk intelligently about a lease? There's a lot of things you can do with a lease. If you find yourself in an equity situation, you can, instead of turning it in, you can sell it to your buddy. You can put it on, you know, Auto Trader. You can take that profit and go lease another one. I can go on and on and on. I think there's great value in looking deeper into this sales process and find out what's really going on and talk more intelligently to the customer. The customer wants to be talked to more intelligently. Those pat kind of answers, well, Mr. Smith, you didn't pay off your loan as fast as the natural depreciation of the vehicle. Yeah, it's the truth. But they've been hearing that all along. The reality of the situation is if your salesperson can't confidently open up a tablet and say, Mr. Smith, look at this. You're $4,000 in equity. You owe $4,000 more than what your trade is worth. And I think I know the reason why. Would you like for me to share that with you? Well, of course Mr. Smith wants to know why. Yeah, Bankrate.com, we're not affiliated with them whatsoever. There's a mortgage calculator. We plug that figure in. And we scroll down to the amortization schedule. He said you own that exactly 3 years. And an $18,000 loan at 8%, plus your vehicle service agreement that you purchased for $2,000, we're coming up with $6,000 or more. That's the reason why your car's not worth what your payoff is. Stop saying stupid things to customers and expect them to buy a car from you. I'll tell a quick story. My lease is up at my apartment. I've been wondering, or it's almost up, and I've been wondering, are they going to raise the prices on me? I asked them last month, I said, hey, look, you know, are you guys going to raise the prices on me? They said, well, you know, wouldn't answer me. I told them, I said, if you go up one dime, I'm out of here. What I should have done, well, anyway, I get the letter, and it went up $60, $65, almost $70 a month. So I went to the office, I said, hey, my lease is $70 more a month. And they've got this pat answer. 3 of them said it. As I talked to one, she said it. As I was walking out the door, he said it. I saw another one out in the parking lot. I said, you know, my interest is, my rent's going up $70 a month. Oh, it's market conditions. They all said the same thing. They have a sales manager. They have their sales meeting. They say, so when the customer hits the roof, you tell them market conditions, because they can't look at our computer. They don't know how many, vacant units we have. That's what you tell them. And what they know is, okay, they got me in a corner. They know it takes too much time, energy, and effort for me to pack my stuff and go. Or I make the choice to pay $900. But that was a pat sales answer. Your salespeople in your dealership are saying similar things. And I told that lady, I said, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. Those market conditions. I could have called you last week acting like Joe Plumber, what's your cheapest apartment you got on premises? And you would have told me, and I told her this, you would have told me last week, $815, just to get my business. But you know that I don't want to move. So you raise the rent on me. Am I gonna, I don't see that it's cost effective for me to to stay here and pay $900. But that was their pat answer. Get away from those kinds of weak, pat, going nowhere type of closes.